this is not something I was hoping to talk about, but it is something that I believe should be talked about, and it is the Digital Age Assurance Act. Now, as you can see, I'm a Linux user. I specifically use Arch Linux, my own special spin of it called Nexus OS. I have put a lot of effort into making this look and feel just right, and I believe I have finally gotten there. This is my pride and joy. This is what I love doing with my computer. And I will very likely be playing a lot of games on this computer. I have Steam installed on this. I have Heroic installed on this. I have Discord installed on this. I have a lot of things that are currently under fire by age assurance laws. And for what reason? They say it's to protect the kids. But I believe there is a deeper reason. Now, one thing that we need to be very much aware of if this thing comes into fruition is the fact that we will no longer have any more digital freedom. Anything we do on our computer is directly tied to our identities, and there is nothing we can do about it. It is just the way it is. And the problem I have with that is this was not how the internet was ever meant to be. The internet was never supposed to be a space where children could be active on. That was never the point of the internet. The internet was supposed to be an information highway. And yeah, sometimes children can benefit from that. But that was never the point. I agree that as time has gone on, and the internet has gotten more accessible over time, that a lot of things have in fact just moved to the internet simply because of how readily available it makes everything. Thinking about like school and stuff, or medical stuff, if you're feeling a little bit under the weather and you're experiencing some very weird but specific symptoms related to, I don't know, dizziness, or wanting to vomit very sporadically. These are very valid things to be worried about, and you should be able to look those up, even as a kid. Would I recommend you believe anything you see on the internet? Absolutely not, because while it is the internet is basically is like the highway of information. It is also one of the easiest places you can get gaslit into thinking the most ridiculous things. It is also one of the easiest places you can get tricked into thinking some things are okay when they really aren't. And that is what people are trying to take advantage of right now. So, the Digital Age Assurance Act is, first and foremost, uh, painted as a way of protecting children online, with the priority of the whole design being making sure that children are kept away from adult spaces so that they do not come face to face with potential adult content. Specifically talking about, for example, pornography here. Now, while I agree that this is a good thing and that we should be keeping children away from this type of content, or the type of people that would encourage watching that type of content, because let's be real, it is harmful. It is very much not okay for children to be exposed to sexual themes and for children to be exposed to sex in general. This is where sexual abuse targeted towards children is primarily coming from. However, that does not mean that we, as a society, should make it impossible for actual adults to access these types of information without having to give up our identity. Because that was one of the great things about the internet, is that you didn't really have to tell anyone who you really were in order to access a space. The only reason you would have to tell anyone who you really were is if you were introducing yourself to someone, and even then, it would more than likely be limited to either your chosen screen name or your real name. And either would have been a valid option. Nowadays, however, it seems as though if we want to access these adult spaces, we are going to be forced to present ID. This is problematic because some of these adult spaces are not entirely designed around smut. I have a couple of friends, for example, that are dealing with PTSD and are suffering from trauma. And they are in trauma-related groups where they help each other get over said trauma. The reason having to present ID is not a good idea for this type of situation is because a lot of people are in general, and rightfully so, uncomfortable with presenting their ID to an untrusty source. And I have to say that I have to agree. I mean, rule number one of being secure online is to not trust anyone with your sensitive information. I would argue that your literal government identity is one of the most sensitive bits of information you can have. And that the minute you share that with anyone, you are at a very high risk. Even if the person or the company you are sharing it with is doing its best to make you believe that they are not going to mess with anything and that they will take your private information very seriously and delete the government ID and related information as soon as everything has, been verified and stuff, I do not believe we can trust anyone. As much as I want to trust these companies, I have just way too little faith in that things like this will go right. Because, truth be told, it violates what I recognize as rule number one of being secure online. And two, more importantly, there have been way too many cases of it just not going right in recent history. I don't think I really need to tell anyone about the whole Persona data leak and the Discord data leak that happened about a year ago. this has painted me in a very this has painted for me a very dark and grim image of what I should be expecting of age verification stuff. And it is genuinely making it hard for me to even put the littlest amount of faith into anything related to online ID checking. I have once in my entire life agreed to present my ID for age assurance in a NSFW Discord server. And the person that was doing the age assurance told me that it would be completely fine if I censored and redacted out anything that I didn't feel comfortable with sharing, as long as my date of birth and proof that the Discord account belonged to me was visible. Even with all of this taken into account, all of these precautions have been taken, I was still extremely sketch about doing it, because I don't know. Can I really trust this person? Can I really trust this group? It turned out I could, but I have seen plenty of cases where some people just straight up couldn't, and that in doing so, they have directly put themselves at a very, very dangerous position. The reason that this is starting to become very problematic for me, and the reason that I want to talk about it so much right now, is because previously it was to verify to be able to use chat apps. I was not about to present my ID just to be able to say hi to my best friends. That is dystopian beyond belief. However, a darker and potentially scarier version of this has reared its ugly head around the corner, and that is the fact that we may soon start seeing age verification prompt on the computer itself. I'm talking the inability to log into your own personal local account on your own personal local system because your computer is not sure how old you are. The problem with this is that it doesn't need to know. What I do on my computer is my business and not the computer's business. The computer should just be doing what it's told. And like I said, it's very clear I run Linux. It's my favorite way of running my computer. It has been for the longest time, and this is purely because I have a very, very bad issue with Windows, being that Windows is, for its price, not at all the operating system I'm expecting anymore. The last good version of Windows was a pretty early version of Windows 10. Because that was the last version of Windows that I felt like I could trust. The current ecosystem of Windows is a whole topic of its own, and I do not believe talking about it in this video is going to do the point that I'm trying to get across any good. So for now, I am just going to move on while saying that I just don't like using Windows, and that I really prefer the freedom that Linux gives me. Now, why Linux? Linux is a very powerful operating system to me. It has allowed me the freedom to customize the system as much as I want and in exactly any way I want. So, for example, I can just turn off this top bar if I don't want it anymore. Or I can move it to the bottom. Swap it with my application dock. And those are just very basic examples of things. Linux is very powerful to me. I can make it work and look exactly however I want. I can fine tune every single aspect of it without limit. And the only reason I can is because I have complete control over it. This is primarily what Linux is about. As a Linux user, you are the root user. Everything is a file and everything can be modified. Except, of course, the firmware, but that is like a whole different thing of its own as well, and not worth going over. The point is, as a Linux user, I have been empowered to use my computer in the best way I can, and I have been taking advantage of it as much as I can, because I am just that type of person. The Age Assurance Act, the Digital Age Assurance Act, is a cause for a conflict of interest. Because the problem with this act is that it takes away a bit of control from me. I am seeing and predicting a future where the ability to press the power button, yes, the ability to press the power button is going to be locked behind an ID check. I don't even have any words to describe just how dystopian that sounds to me, and just how wrong it feels as someone who is used to having complete power. Not just because I am used to having complete power, but for basic usability, even if someone doesn't want all that power and prefers to use a Windows-based operating system for that very reason, having to present ID just to be able to turn on a machine that you paid for with your own goddamn money is so incredibly dystopian that I cannot even think of any words that would accurately describe how angry I am at the state of the world right now. And I'm going to be real with you, but I believe that the only reason we are having to deal with this is because the people that are pushing these laws are just incredibly out of touch and don't even know what the world looks like. Of course, I am a 24-year-old transgender woman who spends most of its life browsing the internet, watching YouTube, and playing video games, while tinkering its computer to the best of its ability. But that doesn't take away anything from the current situation, because there are far more problems with this than just being able to use your computer. Like I said earlier, we have a bit of a general rule around being safe online, and that is to never trust anyone with your sensitive data. And these people are saying that this is to protect the children. So you're telling me that you want to protect the children by putting them directly at risk? That is so delusional and out of touch that I once again lack the ability to present you with words to describe how awful I feel about this situation. I do not want to be that person, but right now it seems that the random transgender woman that spends most of its time not having a life is actually better at politics than actual politicians. And that is sad, because this does not need to be a political topic. The fact that this even is a political topic to begin with is problematic. Because, let's be real, the ability to use your own hardware is not a political idea. The ability to use your own hardware should exclusively be based on whether or not you can afford it. This is not politics. This is money. And not even then. Sometimes you just get something. A computer. It's being given to you. You own it now. This should not be a thing that we're even talking about to begin with. And if your view of interest, if your reason of interest in this whole thing is genuinely to protect the children, then why aren't you protecting the children? Because protecting the children, first and foremost, is the parent's job. Now, while I agree that sometimes a platform can be considered to be at fault for enabling certain types of abuse, I believe primarily the fault should be considered with the parent for not keeping an eye on their child. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you, as a mom, are acting surprised that little Timmy got groomed on the internet, after giving little Timmy full and unrestricted access on the internet, maybe you shouldn't have given little Timmy full and unrestricted access to the internet. This has been a standpoint that I've been with for a long time. And I believe more people should have it. This isn't me trying to dismiss that there should be options for platforms to help parents, because there should be. This is why a lot of platforms have parental controls in place. But a lot of people just opt not to use them, and then somehow it still is the platform's fault if somehow your kid does something that they were not supposed to do. This is something I like to call neglectful parenting, and I have seen a lot of it over the recent years, especially since the coronavirus bursted out. And parents are just working from home and do not have time for their kids. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has already passed, and realistically, there should not be any more reason for this, which makes the idea that this is being pushed for even crazier to me. Because even still, if you are unable to take care of your kids, you should at least give them restricted access to the things that they should have restricted access to. If you give them unrestricted access to something you know will get them in trouble, then I still believe that you are at fault. And I am not going to be the one to protect you in that court case. If you are genuinely the kind of parent that does not care, and then you are the one that acts surprised when something bad happens, even though you're the careless one, I am not sorry for saying this, but I don't think you deserve to be a parent. On most platforms, like I said, especially Apple and Windows, parental controls are right there. You can just set them up. If you don't know how to do that, that's fine. You can use a guide online. Once again, the internet is a great place for information. Should you believe just about anything you find on the internet? No, because it is also very easy to gaslight people on the internet. But for genuine information, the internet is also a fine place. If you don't really trust any third-party sources, there is probably some guide on whatever platform you're using on setting up parental controls correctly. And if they don't want to provide that, then that is on the platform. However, it should also be noted that a lot of platforms are designed around mature audiences in mind already. A recent lawsuit I have seen against Valve is a prime example of that. The New York State Attorney is alleging that Valve is illegally enabling gambling towards minors on games that are M-rated. There shouldn't be any minors in the picture to begin with, and yet you are blaming Valve for targeting children with harmful ideology? It's an M-rated game. If the parent let the child play an M-rated game, I still believe that is on the parent. Valve does have parental controls, and if the parent fails to set that up, then that is on the parent. I will agree that Valve's parental controls is a little bit lacking in some places, but hey, it's there and it works for the most part. There are some things that I do believe Valve could work on with their parental controls, but the base idea is there. If a game is considered too old for a child's age group, the child is just not allowed to play it or purchase it. And if the game does still somehow make it into the child's Steam library, then the child needs to ask parental permission in order to access the game, and this is usually done through passcodes and stuff. The whole idea of having to require actual people that are not comfortable with sharing their ID because it violates the first rule of being secure online, to provide their ID just to be able to use the hardware that they previously thought they owned and rightfully paid for, is beyond dystopian and borderline evil. And I will stick to that statement for as much as I can, because that's just what it is. It's evil. And honestly, I believe that we should be fighting this entire thing. We should be doing something to stop this from taking off and protecting our identities as genuine people of the internet. Because, my god, does this sound like a horrible idea? And above that, I am scared. Not just for my identity, but for the ability to do anything with my computer. Just in general. Privacy is gone. And this is just going to be a Trojan for complete and utter identity tracking. Everything you do, anything you say online, is going to be directly tied to your real personal ID. Because that's just how it works now. You have no more anonymity. You have no more ability to just be someone who you want to be without being scared of your IRL identity being ruined for it. If you do not want your co-workers to know that you're trans because you know that one of your co-workers is extremely transphobic and want to avoid getting into trouble with them because it is going to ruin some work-related things, then I believe you should have every right to be anonymous online while still having access to your actual identity. If the ability to safely do anything of the sort is going to be taken away from general individuals, then what the fuck are we doing? I do not want to live in this future. And I believe there's plenty of other people who also do not want to live in this future. We should do something about this. Because it's going to get out of hand if we don't. And if it does get out of hand, we as a society are truly and genuinely fucked. Without a doubt, there is no way this is gonna go well. And it concerns me because there are so many things that I need the internet for. But if I cannot comfortably use the internet anymore, then what the fuck is the point even of owning a computer? What the fuck even is the point of having the hobby that I have? What the fuck is the point of doing literally anything at all? This is who I am. And if I cannot be who I am, then I might as well not be. That is my standpoint on this whole situation. Thank you for listening to this rant. I hope this taught you something, raised some ideas, and like I said, we should all do something about this where we can. We should stop this whole ID gate bullshit. We should stop this whole. We should just say something about it. Prevent it from getting out of hand. There are better ways to protect children online if that is really what this is about. I do not believe that this is what that is about. But if it is, there are better ways. And we should be using those instead of whatever the fuck this is.